Could America's riots become civil war? Could a U.S. collapse spark World War III?
Tonight with Los Angeles bracing tonight after sweeping immigration raids sparked protests and clashes tonight. A U.S. official now confirming to ABC News 700 Marines are now on their way to Los Angeles to join California's National Guard, which was deployed by the president, not that state's governor.
Empires do not fall in a single day.
Descending into chaos. Protesters setting cars on fire.
They rot from within.
Over whether or not Texas children should be allowed in drag events.
And collapse and fire.
History repeats. When Rome fell, the world followed. When Byzantium burned, Christ's light was preserved by trembling hands. What will we preserve if our empire falls?
If you've ever watched this channel and enjoyed the content, could I ask for a small favor? Please hit the subscribe button, share the content, and add your thoughts in the comments below. It's the only way we can keep growing, despite the algorithm. Your subscription, shares, and comments help this channel more than I can explain right now, make you an integral part of our success. I promise to return the favor by making the show increasingly better. We're on this journey together, and I'm willing to make that promise. Do we have a deal?
Empires do not fall in a single day. They rot from within and collapse in fire.
The streets are restless. Headlines warn of days of rage. Now Israel strikes Iran. Are we watching the death throes of a republic or the birth of something darker?
Perhaps both. Empires collapse, and from their ruins, the world often burns anew. Yet the hour of repentance always remains.
How does it happen? When do protests become riots, and riots become the first shots of civil war?
When do riots become the first shots of civil war? The stages are always the same, whether in Rome or in Byzantium or in the world today. First, there's moral disintegration. Families, faith, truth itself erodes. Then there's economic fracture, and resentment grows. Then, institutional distrust, justice and government collapse. Polarization, identity replaces citizenship. And trigger events ignite what festers beneath. And when those elements align, history shows what follows. Consider, in 1789, a crowd in Paris stormed the Bastille, seeking bread. Within weeks, the French Revolution devoured its own children. A crowd seeking bread soon demanded heads. In 1917, women in Petrograd marched for food. Soldiers refused to fire, and the Tsar fell. Russia spiraled into civil war. The March for Bread became the March for Blood. In 2011, teenagers' graffiti in Daraa sparked protests. Government repression turned them to riots. Then, a decade-long Syrian civil war. Graffiti became the spark of a nation's, let's say, dismemberment. And in America, the New York draft riots of 1863. Resentment over conscription became an orgy of violence. Over 100 dead, black citizens lynched, orphanages burned. Anger against the draft became civil war in the streets. The pattern is clear. When the bonds of society weaken, when trust collapses, when moral restraint is lost, protests become riots, and riots become civil war.
And today?
Yeah, and today. And today we walk the same path. Mass distrust, deep economic divides, fractured identity, and now, escalating external crises. Yet we move forward blind to the history behind us. And still, we may turn back, but it's later than you think.
History warns us, but are we listening? What lessons does history teach us?
Yeah, history warns us. Rome's decline began not on the battlefield, but in the Senate and in the soul. It is reported that Cicero, for example, warned, quote, The budget should be balanced, public debt reduced, the assistance to foreign lands curtailed, lest Rome become bankrupt. The warnings were, of course, unheeded. In the final days, the Roman Forum stood silent. Marble statues toppled, the aqueducts crumbled, the legions no longer marched beneath a single banner. Rome, the eternal city, was consumed by shadows. Byzantium, once the lighthouse of Christendom, fell in 1453. The bells of Hagia Sophia rang out a final liturgy. Children were led away in chains. The priests chanted as the city burned. The last emperor vanished amid the smoke, his crown lost to time. In Weimar, Germany, hyperinflation left mothers burning banknotes for heat. Starving citizens marched beneath crimson banners. The old order withered and a new darkness rose. Yugoslavia, once a federation of brothers, became a cauldron of blood. Neighbors turned on neighbors. Ancient hatreds, long dormant, were given new life in the fires of civil war. The pattern holds: moral decay, social fracture, external chaos, and finally, civil conflict.
And we now stand in that chain?
Indeed. We build great towers of technology, yet our foundations rot beneath us. And now, wars abroad risk feeding collapse at home. If the American house is divided, what global storm will it fail to withstand?
If it happens, if America fractures, could this truly trigger World War III?
Yeah. If America fractures, it could trigger World War III. Absolutely. Consider the global web. The U.S. underwrites NATO and global trade. A divided U.S. weakens deterrence against China's ambitions. A domestic power vacuum invites, let's say, Russian adventurism. The Middle East, already volatile, now ignited by recent events. And most ominous, in a fractured America, who safeguards its nuclear arsenal?
And Israel striking Iran's nuclear sites. Then Iran launched over 100 missiles and drones at Israel. Sirens rang out across Tel Aviv as ballistic missiles struck. The Israeli defense minister says a red line has been crossed. This isn't hypothetical. It's happening. Does this change the calculus?
It's definitely not hypothetical. That much is certain. This is exactly the kind of global flashpoint one ought to fear. As America fractures, who will restrain this war? When a divided republic loses its moral compass, it cannot hold the storms at bay. Civil war at home weakens deterrence abroad. That vacuum invites explosions, literal and metaphorical, on a global scale, I'm afraid. This is how great wars begin, not by grand design, but through cascading miscalculations, fed by internal weakness and, most importantly, moral blindness. If America is consumed by civil conflict, it cannot restrain events abroad. Israel-Iran escalation could spiral. China may seize the opportunity. Russia may move. Alliances will fracture. Markets will collapse. One misstep, and the conflagration becomes, well, global.
A chain reaction.
Yeah, a chain reaction. Exactly. Thucydides wrote, "It was the rise of Athens and the fear this installed in Sparta that made war inevitable." In our time, it may be the fall of America and the temptation it presents that risks Armageddon.
If this is true, what can be done? Is it too late?
It's never too late, but the solution is not political. It's spiritual. Return to repentance, national and personal. Rebuild the family. Reaffirm the sanctity of truth and remembrance of our faith. Consider the darkest days of the Ottoman conquest, when the Hagia Sophia had fallen. Orthodox monks in Mount Athos preserved the ancient faith. Manuscripts were copied by trembling hands beneath candlelight. The gospel endured, though the empire crumbled. Or remember St. John Chrysostom. Remarkably, he preached in Antioch as riots engulfed the city. He stood in the pulpit as statues of the emperor were torn down, calling his flock to humility and repentance amid the fury. And beware, Theodora, of the spirit now rising in our streets. When protests no longer seek justice, but crave vengeance, it ceases to be righteous. It becomes merely an idol. Riot is the liturgy of a nation that has forsaken prayer. If we will not kneel before the cross, we will burn cities before false kings. So must we stand. The church must be a lighthouse in a storm, not entangled in a political party, not afraid to speak truth, and each soul must become a flame of hope.
And if we do not?
Yeah. If we do not, then I'm afraid the darkness deepens. Civil war will not end at our borders. And when the trumpets sound, it may not be for peace, but for war. But where Christ reigns, even amid collapse, the soul may stand unbroken.
He has a poor track record on fasting. He was once accused of using vulgar language, but he said the accusation was bullshit. He loves the smell of gasoline and burning oil around his motorcycles and never stops drinking Coke Zero. He hasn't learned how to walk away from a fight. He's been to hell and back more than once, bringing a few public companies along for the ride. Other clergy scoff at him. The SEC and Big Pharma try to, quote, silence him for good. But their efforts haven't had the intended effect. That's Father Emmanuel.
Growing up in Tirana, where the call to a dawn echoed from the spiraling minarets, was a powerful experience for her. Albanians were forced to convert to Islam under Ottoman rule. In 1967, under the Marxist-Leninist regime, Albania became the world's first atheist state and destroyed churches to eradicate Christianity, in a land where St. Paul once preached the gospel. Her grandfather fought as a guerrilla fighter, and her father commanded a tank brigade. When communism collapsed, there was an insurrection against the state, leading to anarchy. Albanian women are known for their resilience. It is said they are born from the barrel of a gun. As a teenager, her father was flown out of the country without notice on a military helicopter to save his life. From then on, she started sleeping with an AK-47 next to her bed.